Live from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for April 13, 2010, the 35th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. Here are your hosts.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Susan Hoffman.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Coming up on tonight's program, the hotel-motel tax to fund a replacement for the Georgia Dome passes the Senate, but with an important amendment. And Governor Sonny Perdue appoints a special attorney general to pursue the state's federal health care lawsuit.
But first, our top story tonight, the fiscal year 2011 budget passes out of committee. The House Appropriations Committee passes the 2011 budget, House Bill 948, totaling $17.8 billion. House leaders are relying on two very important bills to balance this budget. The first, House Bill 1055, the fees bill, which increases fees charged by state agencies to cover the cost of doing business. The second is House Bill 307, the governor's proposed hospital bed tax. But you will recall the Senate passed House Bill 307 with an amendment to roll back the tax on insurance premiums, a way of sweetening the deal for some Senate Republicans. Well, House Appropriations Chair Ben Harvin favors rolling back the premium tax, but doesn't like the amendment.
Our premium tax is fourth highest in the country, and I have been an advocate of reducing it for a long time. But I think it needs to be vetted through a process, and we have to work through that process, not just done at the last minute just to capture votes for something that, quite frankly, 307 was their idea to begin with. It just had to start in the House. So we want to work with them, and I think we will, but we can't slow this down anymore and not be out of here before May. I mean, we're ready to go home.
And you're confident that House Bill 1055, better known as the fees bill, is going to go through the Senate without any problem?
The Senate has given us a lot of comfort over the last few days. I've met with Senator Jack Hill, Appropriations Chair, and he felt comfortable that that bill was okay. It did not have the struggle that we had in 307, which is just the opposite of what we had in the House. But as long as they're comfortable, I mean, we'll know tomorrow. 1055 will be on the floor. If it doesn't pass, then quite frankly, we're going to be in tough shape. We could be in a special session. Or cut more out of education and health care. And I think we've done a good job with this budget right now. And I think we've shown them that if we can pass those two bills and get this done, that the damage is not so bad that we devastate our health care and education system. But if you take that $250 million out, I hope they understand that we could be devastating ourselves in the health care arena especially.
When the governor set forth his budget, he wanted to up the cost to get a driver's license, and House leaders said no. Why?
No, I mean, you see the fees we raised. Most all the fees we raised were things that people choose to have. A driver's license, most people like to say, well, driving is a privilege, and technically under the law it is. But you have to have a driver's license, and you have to have a vehicle in order to be employable, in order to get a job. So it's a requirement, and we just felt like with all the other fees that we were trying to address, which were more usual, optional, things like that, the driver's license should just be left alone, and if we come back later, maybe, but right now I think that's something that's required, regardless of how the law calls it a privilege. It is something that you have to survive in society today.
You decided not to extend some sales tax exemptions for some large employers in Georgia, like Lockheed. Why?
Well, sales tax exemptions have taken a lot of criticism over the past few years because we have so many, and I think that our decision this year was not to extend any sales tax exemptions. Let's try to come up with a process to review those sales tax exemptions. And as we do that, some of those may be brought back in later. But right now, if we start picking and choosing, then we'll have everyone with their new one, and that'll be their favorite, and we'll need to have that one. So we're letting them all expire this year that are coming up, and those next year the same thing. And until we can set up a process to review, make sure that those sales tax exemptions, Senate Bill 206, which I carried in the House, come up with a process that says if this sales tax exemption is passed, we'll know whether it's going to cost us money or save us money, create jobs. I mean, there needs to be some benefit because you're passing that tax burden off to everyone else when you remove it from that small group. And in return, that small group should create jobs or create revenue or create a better economy for the state of Georgia. And we don't have a way to measure that right now. So until we do, we're just going to hold off and not pass any.
Are there any mandated furloughs in this budget?
No mandated furloughs. That is up to each department. There are cuts. There are going to be some layoffs throughout this budget. But no mandated furloughs. We'll let each department head determine how they want to handle and manage themselves to this budget.
Just how many layoffs? Harvin says 900, which would be on top of the many state employees already laid off in the last year or so. Again, the 2011 budget, House Bill 948, passed House Appropriations Committee 61-8. It moves to the House floor tomorrow. Quick note on the 2010 supplemental budget. Both the House and the Senate have insisted on their versions of that budget. That means it goes to conference committee.
Macon senators today moved towards being able to use hotel tax proceeds to benefit the Georgia Music and Sports Halls of Fame. Senator Cecil Staton explained why it was important to amend House Bill 903, a measure originally intended for the Georgia World Congress Center and the Georgia Dome.
We attempted to move this legislation through the House. Our delegation is united for Bibb County. We've worked on this issue for 3 years. And the goal of this is to be able to use a penny of our hotel motel tax to support the Halls of Fame in Macon. As you know, the Halls of Fame have seen budget cuts now for a number of years. The state's investment in those two facilities is much less than it has ever been. We've worked very hard as a delegation in Bibb County over the last 3 years to build support at the local level to help the Halls of Fame, because let me be very candid with you, my colleagues, this morning. Those two facilities in Macon, Georgia, are just as important to our community and just as important to the economic development of Middle Georgia as are these larger facilities that we have in Atlanta.
By a vote of 42-4, HB 903 passed the Senate with 2 amendments. It now returns to the House. And a bill that passed the House as a name change for the Georgia Environmental Facilities Authority emerged from the Senate today as a reduction in the amount of money available for loans to counties that want to build reservoirs from $530 million to $40 million. Opponents of the change to House Bill 244 say the measure is a blow to local governments, but supporters say it's just a sign of the times.
Because times are tough, we're cinching up our belt and we're going to the level where we used to be. And I would say that most places would say we understand at the state government that when times are tough you can't do as much, but thank you very much for still doing something, which is what we're doing.
Isn't it true that once again we could be acting in a way that sends a message to local officials that we're not concerned about making their job harder and that we're not concerned about placing another roadblock in their path as they try to serve the citizens that elected them down at the local government level all across this great state of ours? Isn't that true?
No, ma'am, it's not. In fact, I think the mere fact that even in tough budget times we're still providing $40 million in state funding for these projects, and along with the fact that the federal government has consistently over the last 10 years increased its funding, and in fact this year, or actually in fiscal year 2009, at the level of $120 million, which will not be affected by this, for the Clearwater Fund loan executions and the Drinking Water Fund executions just south of $18 million are available.
The Senate approved House Bill 244. The vote was 30-20. Changes made by the Senate send that measure back to the House.
And the House okays a bill that would send out an alert to all motorists, much like a Maddie alert, if an officer is down and the suspect is still at large.
Senate Bill 397, all it does is establishes the blue alert system, which will be activated when a suspect for a crime involving the death or serious injury of a peace officer has not been apprehended. The law enforcement personnel will determine that the suspect may be a serious threat to the public, and this system will be operated in the same manner as Maddie's Call, which is a statewide alert system for missing disabled adults. I ask for your favorable consideration on the bill, and I will yield the will, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Bobby Franklin noted we already have 3 alert systems, one for abducted children, one for abducted adults, and one for missing disabled adults, and that our heroes in blue would be embarrassed by this one.
But every hero in blue that I have spoken with serves. They know and they truly do protect and serve the people of the state of Georgia. And I believe they would be somewhat embarrassed that they would be pulled off of protecting and serving victims who are seeking, who need to be found because they have either been the victim of a crime and need to be found before any further harm is done to them, or in the case of Maddie's Call, if they are have some
mental incapacity and have wandered away and has no idea how to get home. Our heroes in blue would not want to detract from saving those lives to hunt down a perpetrator.
The bill, Senate Bill 397, passed 164-2. It goes to the governor.
The Senate agreed today that the GBI should not be compelled to provide graphic pictures of the Meredith Emerson murder scene to the media.
Hustler magazine wants the crime scene photos of the nude and decapitated body of Miss Emerson so that they can publish them, and the GBI has refused, but they're waiting on us to pass a law that would exempt those from the public records request. And this legislation is narrowly drawn to address those type of photos and not allow the Hustler magazine and other magazines to get these pictures and publish them.
Senator Donzella James sought to broaden the bill with an amendment limiting media access to 911 calls involving crime or disaster victims.
They are very distressed that people can get 911 tapes easily, especially when suffering happens with an individual, with a citizen, and then even more suffering happens as a result of those 911 tapes being able to be public record right now.
The James Amendment was adopted. House Bill 1322 passed without opposition. The Senate changes mean it returns to the House.
And the House approves Senate Bill. Now we're going to try again. The House approves Senate Bill 369 today. It gives local governments and housing authorities more freedom to invest proceeds from bond sales while waiting to begin work on new projects.
Both of these address the investment powers of either the housing authority or the local government, where they have sold bonds for particular projects, and now the bond money is being held on a temporary basis before the bond money is used for the project. In other words, the projects may take a time for design, preparation, architectural work, then construction. And what we have here is the language that allows those funds to be held for an investment purpose. And we're broadening the types of federal investments that can be used, what I call safe harbor investments, because over the years there has been an increase in the areas of typed guaranteed, U.S. government guaranteed investments. We're limiting these only to what are those rated A, AA, or AAA, and to allow the local governing authorities to hold those funds on a temporary basis for investments.
Senate Bill 369 passed. The vote was 116-44. It did pass by substitute. That means they made changes, so it has to go back to the Senate. The House also passes Senate Bill 392, which mandates any transportation company working for schools transporting kids must be certified by the PSC, the Public Service Commission, and show proof of insurance. Senate Bill 392 passed 158-4. It goes to the governor.
And senators on both sides of the aisle respond today to Insurance Commissioner John Oxendine's refusal yesterday to participate in the federal health care reform program by providing a high-risk insurance pool. Senator Nan Orrock said that this bodes poorly for Oxendine, who is seeking the Republican nomination for governor.
Be very, very aware and very, very careful as you choose leadership in this year's elections. The insurance commissioner has turned his back and said no. Now, the good news is that the federal government has committed to operate a program for a state like ours, where the state leadership refuses to set up a high-risk pool for health insurance for people who are currently uninsurable.
Senator John Douglas rose to disagree with the entire premise of providing insurance to those with pre-existing conditions.
And I think maybe the federal government ought to let us start buying car insurance after you already have an accident. Maybe we could have no pre-existing conditions on automobile insurance, or perhaps after a tornado or fire comes along and wrecks your house, you could buy more insurance for your house without any pre-existing conditions. You know, I appreciate the fact that in spite of our Attorney General not standing up for this state, that one of the other constitutional officers will. And so when the federal government decides to take the money out of our pockets for some harebrained scheme like what's going on now, then we do have constitutional officers in this state who will stand up for us.
In other news today, Governor Sonny Perdue has appointed a special attorney general to pursue the state's challenge to the federal health care legislation. The governor issued a statement today announcing Frank C. Jones as the special AG. He's going to serve on a pro bono basis at no cost to the state. The special appointment was prompted when Attorney General Thurber Baker, who is running for the Democratic nomination for governor, declined to take part in the lawsuit over concerns of the expense to taxpayers. Georgia joins 18 other states, including Florida, South Carolina, and Alabama, that are suing the federal government over national health care legislation.
Movement today on a measure that has pitted the cable industry against AT&T and made allies of the governor and the Public Service Commission. Senator David Schaefer explained that the Senate had amended House Bill 168 to satisfy all parties.
Under the bill, we allow incumbent telephone companies to choose a method of regulation, whether they wish to be regulated as traditional rate of return companies or whether or not they wish to be regulated under an alternative regulatory scheme. And all this provision does is say that once they make that election, they can't switch again before January 1st, 2016.
Who actually asked for this to be put into the amendment? Was it the small companies or the large companies?
It was actually, I believe this amendment is addressing a concern that the governor raised.
Without opposing vote, the Senate agreed to the House amendment to the Senate substitute as amended. In short, that means the measure goes back to the House.
And legislators, of course, have been working for a few years now to come up with an agreement, a transportation fix, really, for the state. This year, they may actually be closer to doing that. The House today moved to disagree to some changes to Senate Bill 39, Senate changes, a measure that would allow the creation of transportation funding regions within the state, and that gives each region the authority to apply a 1% sales tax to be used for transportation in that region. Although it hasn't insisted on its position yet, the House has moved to disagree with the Senate changes to SB 39. It will likely spur the creation of a conference committee where members of both chambers can sit down and hammer this thing out. Chick Crotler of the Atlanta Regional Commission, the Metro Atlanta's planning agency, told reporters today what the commission would like to see. Take a look.
What we want to see is a bill that creates a region for Metro Atlanta. Whether the rest of the state is treated as regions or whether they can decide how they want to group together on their own is up to them. But we need to be treated as a region in Metro Atlanta, and we need to have the ability to take a project list out to the public, and hopefully they'll agree that it's the right kind of list to fund. This proposal is not going to solve all of our problems, but it will give us a very important influx of cash that we can address some of the most significant transportation problems in the region. We can provide some assistance to MARTA, and we can expand transit in the region.
Yeah, you all sent out a letter to your members yesterday urging them to call their legislators. What was your message in that letter?
Well, the message is that we have 6 days left, and we really would not like to get caught at the 11th hour on the last day again with negotiators trying to figure something out.
Again, just to reiterate, it is very likely that a transportation conference committee will be appointed to make a last-minute effort to reach an agreement on transportation funding this session.
Well, 2 weeks after the demise of Clayton County's C-Tran bus service, Senator Emanuel Jones today brought in a national figure to support the passage of House Bill 1393.
My honor now to recognize on the floor of the Senate individual who's done an awful lot, heads up the Rainbow Coalition. The Reverend Jesse Jackson is with us today.
And certainly with a personality like Reverend Jackson, it brings a lot more visibility to the issues that we've been raising and we've been talking about all along. It's time to ramp up the volume in terms of the discussion regarding C-Tran and the future C-Tran, because there are a lot of riders in this county that is desperately searching for alternative modes of transportation. We need to set the record straight and let everyone know that it was the commissioners in Clayton County that made some short-sighted decisions to, in my opinion, to shut this system down without thoroughly considering all of the options. House Bill 1393 is one of the options. It allows a 1-cent tax in Clayton County. And also, it's a public referendum, eligible for the voters in July. This bill, if passed by the voters, will raise over $40 million annually for Clayton County.
The Senate Finance Committee is scheduled to consider House Bill 1393 tomorrow afternoon.
Georgia students may soon be able to receive needs-based scholarships as part of an expansion to HOPE. Today, the House Higher Education Committee passed Senate Bill 496, which would create the grants program. Lawmakers' Alan Friedman has more.
To be eligible for the grant, students must be enrolled full-time, be a recipient of a Pell Grant, and meet certain residency requirements. Senator Hill explains the purpose of the bill.
What this grant program does is to carve out a small amount, and it's not envisioned as being a huge amount every year, but somewhere in the $30 or $40 million range every year, to focus strictly on the neediest students, whether they be HOPE students or not HOPE students. This would follow the Pell Grant criteria. It's not entitlement. It would be due to appropriations every year, but it would be based on need and need only.
The bill was met with wide support in committee and passed unanimously, now heading to House Rules. Tom Daniels, of the University System of Georgia, commended the bill for furthering the education goals of the state of Georgia.
But there are some Georgians who are qualified to go to college who do not have the 3.0 high school grade point average, who are talented enough for admissions to college and can do college work, but who may need some extra help financially. And this need-based program would be a wonderful addition to the state's portfolio to help become a more educated state.
Representative Chuck Sims also expressed support for the bill, but raised some concerns over funding the grants.
What portion of this money is coming out of the education part of higher education, maybe for technical education after the pre-K program? The concern I guess I would have is somebody was depending on that money and all of a sudden it's not there. What do they do when they don't have that money to go to college on?
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Alan Friedman.
The House Education Committee passed a bill today to allow a local school board to act on a petition for schools in a given high school district to convert into charter schools. SB 457 is sponsored by Senator Dan Weber. Lawmakers' Adam Bridges has more.
In today's meeting, Senator Weber stated that SB 457 is a modification of existing laws regarding charter school conversion.
If some high school clusters are seeking charter status, they would submit their petition, and what this bill says is that they would have a meeting where 60% of the combined vote of the teachers and parents in that cluster would have to approve the petition. If you have a high school cluster where all the parents and school councils come together within that cluster, then you can coordinate what you're doing as a cluster.
Representative Alicia Morgan expressed her concern about students having fair access to the schools.
If you have an area where there's kind of a north versus south or west versus east or whatever, and there is a sentiment in the community where this cluster wants to close themselves off to other people, and quite frankly, when we had the debate about House Bill 251, that was something that came up. One of our members said, I don't want those kids coming to our schools that we've worked so hard for. And so I would have a challenge with leaving this to school boards to negotiate if in fact they may be representing that sentiment themselves.
There is that tension that you described that's going to be there. So trying to make it clear up front that that's not the objective and to guard against that.
Senator Weber said he's likely to make some minor adjustments to the bill's language, but SB 457 did pass in committee today and now moves to House Rules. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Adam Bridges.
Time now for another Lawmakers flashback in honor of our 40th season.
Tonight, from 2001, the House passes a compromise bill to adopt a new state flag, replacing the Confederate battle flag. Governor Roy Barnes addressed the House shortly before debate began.
The Walker Rules Committee substitute takes the original Georgia flag, the Great Seal of Georgia, set against a background of blue, and adds a banner showing all of Georgia's other flags. It has the national flag of the Confederacy and the Confederate battle flag, as well as the flags of the United States. To those who say they cannot accept this because the Confederate flag is still in the banner, you're wrong. The Confederacy is a part of Georgia's history. To those who say they are opposed to this because it changes the current flag, you're wrong also. The Confederacy is part of our history, but it is not two-thirds.
With what is before us in a committed substitute where we have the state seal of Georgia, 13 stars, and Georgia's history on the bottom of the flag, I think is a way that encompasses all that we are about and all that we want to be as a state.
And although this is supposedly a compromise, by making the St. Andrew's cross smaller, it just diminishes our heritage.
I am a Georgian, I am a Southerner, I am a Republican. I am proud of all of these things, and I am also proud to be a part of this bill, which I think goes to great lengths to preserve Georgia's history and removes the questions of heritage or hate that have surrounded our state flag for so long.
I am not totally happy because my proposition, I thought it was a good one, going back to the pre-56 flag, a Confederate flag that flew from 1879 to 1956. But I've learned through my maturity that you have to give some to get some. This is a win-win situation for all of Georgia. This is a victory for all of the people of Georgia. This is not a victory for black people or white people, Democrats, Republicans, urban, rural. This is a victory for all of us collectively.
This has been a Lawmakers Flashback. House Bill 16, the bill to change the state flag, did pass the House 94-82. We'll have coverage of the Senate action in a later flashback.
And for more Lawmakers Flashbacks, keep watching the 40th season of Lawmakers. Well, Ricky Bevington continues to be on assignment tonight, so we're joined by John Nelson for news from around the state. Take it away, John.
Thanks, and Wendy. Let's use the word water without using the word woes. When it comes to Lake Lanier, it's expected to reach full pool by the end of the month, despite the recent dry weather. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says the massive North Georgia reservoir is expected to reach 1,071 feet above sea level in late April. The lake is Metro Atlanta's main water source and at the center of a long-running legal battle among Georgia, Alabama, and Florida over regional water rights. At the height of Georgia's epic drought, you'll remember the lake was about 20 feet below full pool. And finally, Mohawk Industries, one of the world's largest carpet makers, has agreed to an $18 million settlement with employees who claim the company hired illegal immigrants in an effort to depress wages. U.S. District Court Judge Harold Murphy granted a motion to preliminarily approve the settlement and certify the class. A lawyer for the employees said he's very pleased with the settlement. An attorney from Mohawk said the company's happy to put the 6-year-old lawsuit behind them. Mohawk does not admit any wrongdoing. There's more Georgia news at gpb.org, and follow us on Twitter at GPB News. Ladies, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, John.
And coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the 2011 budget is expected to be on the House floor for a vote. And House Bill 1055, the fee increase bill, is scheduled to be taken up in the Senate. We're going to have those stories and, of course, all the latest from Under the Gold Dome tomorrow at 7. If you've missed any part of this program, please tune in when Lawmakers repeats tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. And coming up here on GPB, Georgia Outdoors, Herons and Heroes. That program's next.
And that's our program for the 35th legislative day of the 2010 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wendy Lawson.
And I'm Susan Hoffman. Please join us tomorrow for Lawmakers at 7 p.m. only on GPB.
Good night.
Good night.
Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
And by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.